Hello, Pastor George. This is Preston. Let me ask you a few questions today. How do you support your youth volunteers, and how do they support you? Well, Preston, that's a good question. Actually, at Pierpont, we do regular training. We do that locally by either me personally doing training or working through some youth relevant curriculum together. We usually meet quarterly to do that. We tie that in together, often with other business that we need to do. We also set aside money in our budget specifically so they can go to a conference or special event specifically geared towards the training of in youth ministry. And finally, we hang out. I have them over the house and we have dinner a couple times a year just to let them know I love them and support them. Obviously, that's not their role to provide training or special events for me, but they support me with their love and grace, often forgiveness when I uh, either forget something or they think it should be done another way. But the big word I think there would be love. Okay, Pastor George, that's great. How do you respond to youth volunteers if they mess up? And how do they support you if you mess up? Well, Preston, I think the end of that last answer hits this one too. It goes in both directions, love and grace. Uh, may note also that I have a really mature youth staff. I don't have anybody on my staff that's not been working with teens and working specifically with me for less than 10 years. Very unusual, but I think that's reflects both the our love for Christ and love for each other, ability to forgive, and our heart for youth ministry. How do you address conflict between either two youth workers, two volunteers, or between you and a volunteer? Well, Preston, it doesn't happen much. I think the very few pieces of conflict we had didn't really have to do with actions towards one another, but misunderstanding on what direction we were going or why. But I would address those directly with the person who has the conflict with me, or who's having a conflict with somebody else, and then I would bring that other person, do the same to them for them, and then bring the three of us together. And obviously, if necessary, we'll bring the senior pastor on board to help us bring resolution. The key there is to not let it linger. It has to be dealt with quickly and directly, and again with love and compassion. Uh, Often in leadership, we forget that we represent Christ to those who help us, maybe more so than to anybody else, or we should. Um, well, thank you, Pastor George. The next question has to do with you and your senior pastor. How do you support your lead pastor or supervisor? Well, Preston, this goes back 20 years, maybe 22 years. I had to write a philosophy of staff ministry. And in that class, and maybe that's what this is for, but in that class at seminary, I wrote what I really believe and have practiced, and that is that my first and primary responsibility as a staff pastor is to support my senior pastor, to have his back, not talk behind his back, not go around him, not assume that he doesn't understand youth ministry, but to be direct with him and have a relationship with him. I'll say my senior pastor now is not my best friend. We're not buddies, but we're honest with each other and we work well together. Great. Just a few more questions about staff, your senior pastor. What are some actions and things to do to avoid? I'm sorry. What are some actions and things to avoid when working with your senior pastor or supervisor? This this is important. Maybe the most important thing I have to say on this. Never let him be surprised by what he hears from other people, whether it's good things, bad things, questionable things, um, things that other people have done. When the senior pastor starts to hear about what's going on in youth ministry from other people and not from you, then they begin to lose faith and trust in what you're doing. Uh, every youth ministry has things that happen, good and bad. Um, Kids that make bad choices, adults that make bad choices. Let them know what's going on. Tell him what happened last night. Tell him what happened last week. Make sure he's aware of the good and the bad. Not only will that avoid conflict, you'll actually gain support in the long run for that. Secondly, don't ask forgiveness instead of permission. That's a really bad model. It's funny, but it's not a good model to follow. Talk to him. Ask permission. Make sure he knows what you're doing and why, and you have his blessing or hers. And then follow the vision. It's not your church. It's God's church, and he was asked, or she was asked, to come and lead and shepherd that church. Though you're a part of that leadership team, it's his vision or her vision. So recognize your role and their role. What are some actions and things you do to work with lead pastors to make their life easier? Well, try to think ahead. Look around. Don't just wait to be asked to do things or to fulfill responsibilities. Know what they are. Find them. Get them done. Don't make them wonder where you are. Be early. Be ready. Be responsible. And if you're out late and you don't need to, and you're out till 2 o'clock at a youth event, leave them a message, a text, a note on his desk to say, hey man, I might not be in tomorrow till 10 or 11. I was out till 2, or I was up in the middle of the night with this crisis. Make sure that he or she knows what's going on and isn't wondering where you are. 2 more, Pastor George. How do you address conflict between you and the lead pastor or supervisor? The short answer is it rarely happens because some of that has to do with I'm older than your average youth pastor. I know you can't tell, but my senior pastor and I are only about 10 years apart. And though we're not buddies, we're considerate and we are honest with each other. So that really the conflicts are avoided in that way. If there is a conflict, we deal with it directly. Here's an example. He hurt my feelings, said something trying to be funny, hurt my feelings. I just told him the next day, hey man, when you said that really hurt my feelings. He was devastated. He was just trying to be funny, and I understood that, but it hurt. I let him know. We got over it, and that was that. So again, honesty, grace, and communication, absolutes. Okay, Pastor George, last question. How do you work with a church board? This may be the one I'm least qualified to answer. The structure, the way our senior pastor has it set up, I'm not involved in board meetings, though I have been in the past and have pastored and led board meetings in the past. I'm not there. So again, the more informed the senior pastor is on what I'm doing, the more informed the board is on what I'm doing. Also, I've been in the same place for 20 years. I've had every board member's child in my youth ministry, and I'm friends with most of the board members, but have them over to my house for dinner. So unique situation because I'm preserved well, but old. So that's that. Hey man, I hope you have a good class. Hope you keep learning a lot. Appreciate you and your call to ministry. And see you later, buddy.